Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Things are looking very green here in the greenhouse and some trees already need pruning. So let's begin. The first tree I'll be pruning up today is my Black Locust tree. It's growing really well. So what I want to do today is prune the branches back, keeping them nice and compact with fine internodes. And I'm going to let the top of the tree grow wild to thicken the trunk up, so I get that difference between the trunk diameter and the branch diameter. If I just prune the whole tree, the branches will be the same thickness as the trunk almost, and it won't look very tree-like. The last time I pruned up this tree, I chose this as the front of the tree. I put a marker in the soil here. It could change today, depending on how the branches have formed this year. So let's get to pruning now. I'm going to start the branch pruning, and you can see the tips have grown quite nicely on the branches. If I want this branch to continue going horizontally or cascading, I would prune it off just ahead of a leaf that points downwards. If I want to take it back further, I've got another one that points downward further back, so I think I will, keeping my internodes short. I've got another branch that comes off from the bottom of this branch, and I can prune that in a nice direction coming out the front here. So I will prune the tip off like that. I've got a vertical shoot growing on this branch, so I'm going to remove that entirely. I don't want a branch sticking straight up. That's got that branch pruned up. It's not a very flowing branch. If you look at this, kind of comes up and it goes 90 degrees here. Yes, it'll probably get replaced in the future. You can see there's another branch here that also goes 90 degrees to here. But I have a shoot here that goes out the back of the tree, so I'll prune just in front of that shoot, taking that whole branch tip off like that. And I'll come around to this branch. I've got a branch that flows nicely here and one here, so I think I'll just take the tip off this branch. There's another one that flows nicely behind it here, so I will again take the tip off that branch, shortening it. Then up here I want one shoot to develop as my apex or my leader to help thicken the trunk up, so I'll leave one branch grow unrestricted, and I think it'll be this top one here, so I can prune this other branch back. I've got some good divisions here, so I'll take the tip off that branch. So that's got my branches reduced back. The only other thing I could do is a little leaf pruning to kind of thin it out a bit. So with these compound leaves, you can trim them back, just making them a little more compact. It just makes the tree a little less bushy. Takes a bit of vigor out of the branches. Lets a little more light in. It's just a thinning operation. It won't cause any more branching because these are just leaves. But you can see it makes the tree more compact and you get more light to these branches. This one's kind of growing over top of another branch here. Take this one off totally. Yeah, so that's got it thinned out, so there's light getting to all the places, and my leader is untouched. So let's just look at the front of the tree again. So here's a look
this was my front I had marked. I could see, you know, as a branch forms here, I could get a new leader and prune this one away totally someday. There's a lot of possibilities on the tree. But for now, it's just pruned back, more compact, letting that top leader grow to help thicken up the trunk line. It not only thickens up the trunk line, it helps smooth it out, so all these kind of angular movements in it smooth out over time. Here is a look at how much I took off the tree today. So I would say getting close to maybe half the foliage. There's still lots left on the tree. So I'll put this tree back on the bench, and the next tree I'll be working on is over here, and it's my birch tree. You can see it's growing quite vigorously. So I'll get that out and we'll prune that tree up. Here is a look at my birch tree. And birches are prone to dieback. So generally on birches, you prune them when they're in leaf. You don't winter prune them or those branches could die back. So you wait until there's sap flow in the branches and then you can prune them. And any hard pruning on them can be kind of unpredictable. You can get, you know, whole trunk lines die back. You can get the whole tree die back and it'll sucker up from the root system. So you've got to be very careful with these trees. There's a lot of people that have developed birch bonsai into something really fantastic and then just have it all die one year. It happens with these birches. Any of these kind of pioneer trees, which are the first trees to grow in an area, they can grow under almost any conditions, usually swampy conditions. They're prone to short lifespans and a lot of dieback. So I've waited until this birch came out into leaf and now I'm going to prune it back. Okay, I'm having a look at the tree. So this tree, I did a big prune here last time, cutting the whole top off the tree. And it grew new branches in, you know, around the cut point. So I'm going to want to prune those branches back. So I've got a leaf facing forward here. I can prune just above that. And I'll leave a bit for dieback. Leave a stump on that branch. This one, I've got a good leaf coming out the front here. I'll prune just in front of that or behind that. Like that. These side branches, you can see there's not a lot of growth on this one, so I'll just leave that one untouched. This one, I'll just take the tip off it. The branch back here, I'll just take the tip off it. So this is two trees in this planting. There's a smaller one and the thicker one here. So I don't really want, you know, this branch is growing in towards this trunk. I could kind of prune it so it directs it out the back more. So I'll prune it off shorter and just see how it's looking. It's not too bad. And then the leader on this tree, it's been pruned back here and it's growing up, so I'll shorten it to just above here, like that. There's a shoot out the back here, a branch, that I'll prune back to this outward facing leaf. This one's already been pruned. Here, I've got a branch I could prune back to here. This one, it hasn't developed enough to be pruned yet. So that's got all the branches pruned. I did get, you know, there's one branch that died back here. I'll just clean it up. Clean up some of my stubs from previous prunings. There's another branch that's dead here. I think that stub is dead too. Clean up my stubs. Yeah, they're very prone to dieback, these birch. So I would say never fall in love with your birch tree, because they're generally a short-lived species and they're a bit unpredictable. And a lot of people say, you know, don't bother styling them too much. I'm just going to take the tip off this one. Yeah, they say don't bother styling them too much because the branch you want to develop might die back and you're kind of left with a strange looking tree. So we'll see how it does. It's pruned back now. It's looking a little more compact. Yeah, we'll see how it does over the summer. I think it'll be ready for another prune maybe, you know, towards the end of June. Before I put the trees away, I'm also weeding them. This is the time where you see all the weeds starting to come up. And it's a good idea to weed them now so you have less weeds over the summer. Pull all these little weeds out. I think that's got that tree.
The next tree I'll be pruning up is my apple tree. I'm not pruning it up because it's getting too long or anything. What I want to do is, these branches out the back are getting too long. You know, the back of the pot is here and they're sticking way out. So I think I need to prune some of these back branches away. I originally was going to change the front of the tree to somewhere like here. So I didn't do much pruning to those branches in case I wanted them, but I don't think I'm going to change the front of the tree now. I think I'm going to keep it like this. So I have got some pruning to do out the back here, just bringing these branches back. Okay, let's have a look at these branches. So from the front of the tree, you don't see this one that's hanging down. It's blocked by all these, you know, all these other trunks or branches. So there's not much point having it. It's not doing anything other than, you know, you might see a few leaves down low, but they're too low anyway. So I'm going to prune that away. That hanging branch can go. And I'll leave a little bit of a collar when I prune it. And then this branch here, you can see it's getting quite long, and I have a division here. So I could prune this whole end off the branch and just keep the shorter one here. So I think that would be a good place to prune it. It'll also give it a bit more taper and movement. So off that comes, shortening that branch. Now on this branch also, it has one that's hanging down. I'm going to take that away. I'm going to clean up my stub here. And then I can prune this extension out the back shorter to here, making it, you know, more compact. Then out the back of the tree I have this branch, which is getting quite long. And I'm wondering if I should prune it back now. There's buds back here that are dormant, so I think I'll take the end off that branch. You can see there's quite a straight section here. It's not so interesting, so I'll take it off right here. Like that. Again, you know, bringing it in tighter to the trunk line. There's a stub here I can clean back. And then out the back, I've got, this branch is kind of long. I have a new leader here I could use, so I could prune off this part of the branch. And I will. And I'll leave a stub like that. Bringing that in more compact. I could prune the tip off this new shoot here. So that's brought the back of the tree in a lot closer to the pot. So it's not so sprawling out the back. I think that looks much better. I noticed, I have aphids on the tree here. I'll show you a close-up of those.
Here is a look at the aphids crawling around on that branch there. So I'll have to spray it with the soap and water. So I'll spray those aphids. That'll kill them. I notice there's a little bit of white fly in the greenhouse here too. I'll probably end up spraying the whole tree when I'm done here today. Okay, back to pruning now. Let me go back to the front view. So out the front of the tree I have this branch that's kind of an eye poker branch. It sticks straight out the front and it's also getting very long. I have a shoot on the top of it here that I could grow a more upright branch, making this branch more compact. So I will do that. I'll prune the end off this branch right here, like that. That looks much better. It's less of an eye poker branch. It'll be more of an upright one. There's a lot going on back here. And I do want this tree to look, you know, like a wild apple tree. One that's been kind of abandoned in an orchard, forgotten about, neglected. So I don't want the structure, you know, very organized. I want it quite chaotic. So I'm reluctant to, you know, prune some of these branches away because I think the tree will look too manicured then. There are, you know, a few strong shoots on it. If I look at this one, it's growing very vigorously. So I'll prune that one back just to kind of balance the vigor of the tree. So that one is pruned back. Just keeping an eye out for aphids. I haven't seen any more other than that one branch. There's a stub I can remove here from previous prunings. There's a branch here growing back in towards the center of the tree. I'll take that one out. There's another one here I can take out. I don't want branches growing back across the center. I don't think there's too much else on the tree that, you know, is in dire need of correction. There's maybe a shoot here I could prune back to a better facing branch, so it's not crossing across that back branch quite so much. There's where I sprayed my aphids. Let me see if they're alive. No, they're dead. Yeah, it doesn't take much soap and water to kill aphids. They're very sensitive to it. So is that it? Let me just step back and have a look at the tree. Here is a look at the apple tree. I'll just spin it around. Yeah, so to me, it reminds me of some of the apple trees I see at old farmhouses in the country where, you know, they've had an apple tree by the house and it's seen better days and it's kind of in decline, but the tree still tries to survive and grow. And you see a lot of apple trees like this, you know, at old farms. So I like the image it gives you. It looks like a wild apple tree. So I've got two more things I'm going to do to the tree. I'm going to spray it with soap and water just to make sure there's no whitefly or aphids on it. And then I'm also going to weed the landscape. Here I go with the soap and water. Get underneath the leaves. Basically just spraying everything. And then I'll come above and spray down, making sure to spray the trunk, the surface of the soil, the leaves, the branches. You never know where the insects are hiding. Spray the pot even. Okay, so I'll let that soak for a while, and then I'll come in and rinse the tree off. I get a lot of questions about this moss, this deadwood on the trunk here. You have two options with deadwood. You can try and preserve it, or you can just let it rot away. My hope was that the living part of the tree might generate roots into the deadwood section of the tree. So as the deadwood rots away, you see roots that were intertwined in the deadwood, and slowly they get exposed. I've seen it happen in nature quite often, and it makes a really cool feature on the tree. So that's my goal, is that I'll get roots that form in this rotting deadwood section, and then as it rots away over the years, those living roots will get exposed and it'll create a really interesting section of the tree. If that doesn't happen and it just rots away, well, that's what happens. It's basically just, following what nature would do anyway. If you try and preserve deadwood on these apple trees, you're kind of fighting a losing battle. The deadwood isn't that tough. It's going to slowly die and decay over the years. You can preserve it with wood hardener and things like that, which are going to help, but eventually it's going to rot away. It's pretty well, it's not impossible, but it's very difficult to keep your deadwood looking both natural and stop it from rotting away. So I'm just going to let this rot away, and whatever the tree gives me, it gives me. My last task is to weed the tree, getting rid of this Irish moss. I'm also going to get rid of the moss that's growing up the trunk on the living parts of the trees. I don't mind the moss growing up the deadwood parts, but I want to keep the living parts clean of moss. There's no point having surface roots if you can't see them. I can show you an example of some new roots that have grown into this moss and decaying matter here. So right in here, if you can see that, there's a new root that's formed there. There's some roots trying to form here. There's a new root that's formed along there. So I'm hoping, there's some on the inside that are growing into this decaying wood. That's my goal. There's some liverwort up here. I better get that removed. Nasty stuff. Some weeds are fairly easy to control. You just pull them out. Others, like liverwort and that Irish moss, they're tough. They tend to spread and take over. And they form a lot of roots in the soil. Get hard to pull out. You end up with a pot full of Irish moss instead of this nice kind of finer moss that you want, that doesn't have a deep root system. This Irish moss, the roots go really deep and they form a mat, and it gets hard to water the tree. So I'll work away cleaning up the moss, the landscape, and we'll come back and have a final look at the old apple tree, the ancient apple tree. This tree is quite old now. It was collected from my sister's yard. It was growing beside her house. Someone had stumped it many times trying to get rid of it, and then she asked me if I wanted it, and I said sure. So I went over and dug it up, severed 95% of the roots off of it, and yeah, it was growing quite well, and then it's had a bit of disease on it several times, and it is what it is now. It's seen a lot of hardship, and it kind of looks like that too. But I haven't given up on it. I just keep trying to grow it the best I can each year. And it's still surviving so far after many, many years. I've been working away at the tree, weeding it for about half an hour, and I still have a long way to go. I think this Irish moss must have dropped seeds because there's just hundreds of little ones shooting up all over the place. It's a big, big job weeding all those out, but an important one, so I will keep at it. While I think of it, I better seal my cuts I made today with some rubber cement, just to, you know, protect those cuts a bit. So these raw cuts here, I'll just put a bit of rubber cement on them. All the previous cuts that I sealed with rubber cement look really good. So I certainly don't think it hurts. I don't know how much, you know, good it does, but it can't hurt putting it on. Here's a look at all the Irish moss I've removed so far. There's still a lot of little ones to go, so I'll just keep working away at it for a while longer. I've got the weeds and the moss in my apple tree down to a reasonable level. I could probably spend another hour picking out little bits of Irish moss kind of in amongst the regular moss. But I think, you know, it's so small that I'll wait till it gets a little larger and then it'll be easier to pull out. I think, you know, it's looking good. I can let it grow now. The next tree here is my Japanese gray bark elm. This is one of the larger leaf varieties. It's not the Zelkova with the little tiny leaves. It would be very tempting to prune this tree up. However, this tree was repotted this spring. So all this energy that's, you know, coming out, generating these leaves, was energy that was stored last summer in the sap of the tree. So because it's growing really nicely now doesn't mean the roots are even active yet and supplying energy to the tree. It's probably using the stored energy from last year. So on a newly repotted tree like this, it's best just to leave them alone. Don't be tempted to prune them, just let them grow, you know, at least till midsummer. Then you'll really tell how it's doing. You know, these branches might extend and then the tree might just sit there doing nothing for the rest of the year because it's generating roots in the new soil. So this tree, I'm just going to leave it alone and let it grow, at least for most of the summer. The next trees I'm going to be working on are my Osage Orange trees in this forest. These trees weren't repotted this year, so I can prune them up. This is a forest planting, so I've got to keep all these canopies fairly compact, otherwise they grow long branches and they shade out the trees beside them. So let's get pruning the Osage Orange trees. I'm going to start pruning the tallest trees, pruning them back, so I'm looking for leaf direction, so I'll just prune the tip off this one. To prune this one. And this one. Just to keep them compact. Take the tip off this branch. Take the tip off here. So just a bit of tip pruning is all I'll be doing. And I may do some branch selection also. You know, based on what buds have popped out, you can prune branches off. Like here's a dead one, I can prune that away. I can clean up some of my stubs from the last time I pruned it. Some more tip pruning. So that's got, you know, this canopy compact. This one's fairly compact. This branch is getting a little long. I'm going to prune it back. I don't really like the way this branch is growing towards this other tree, so I'm going to remove that one also. Some of these other trees, I'll just do a little tip pruning. Not a lot of work to do today on them. Just a bit to keep them kind of under control. And it's something you can do throughout the whole summer. It's just try and keep the canopies compact. You don't want long shoots running out. You got to get light to every tree in the forest. So now I'm going to come down to eye level and just look at the branch structure and see if there's any branches that are kind of growing the wrong direction or don't look very good. This tree's looking fairly good. There's a branch kind of coming out the front which is getting a little long. I think I'll prune it back to a more vertical shoot. Like that. I don't want the forest growing out too far. I'll tip prune this one, it's getting a little tall. There's some funny stuff happening with this tree. I'm going to prune this branch back. That looks a lot better. These two trees are kind of intertwined here. I think I'll take off this part of the tree here. Growing this branch as the new leader. The trees in the back should be shorter to give that sense of perspective. Looks like all the trees survived the winter, which is good. A few more dead branches in here. I tried to keep these canopies compact over the summer, but it's shed some of these lower branches. I guess they just weren't getting enough light. Which, you know, happens in a real forest. All the lower branches don't get light and they die off. So just little detail pruning to help the forest grow into the future. And I'll just keep my eyes out for shoots that extend, that look too vigorous, and I'll keep it pruned back nice and compact. Yeah, so there's the forest. I think it's looking quite nice. It's very inviting. You want to walk through it. It looks very miniature. There's a lot of trees in this forest. I don't know what it'll look like, 10 years in the future, but for now, it looks nice. In the future, maybe I'll have to space the trees further apart, creating a larger forest, or thin the forest out maybe, remove some of the trees. Time will tell.
It sure is nice when your trees start to grow, and it was good to get a little bit of pruning done. And that is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.